aloha, y'all. Welcome to the Own the Outcome podcast. My name is Tyler Devereaux. In today's episode, we have Mikey Taylor. And listen to me, I totally messed this up, man. We're talking about owning the outcome. I realized, 10 minutes in to our conversation that I didn't click record. So listen, man, I could have either not posted this episode or we could just own the outcome and realize that, you know what, shit happens, failures happen, and I could not upload this episode because this episode is literally so fire, man. Mikey absolutely crushes it. So I'm going to turn this over now. You're going to catch this kind of mid-conversation, and it's not how it started, but it's how it ends and how it goes, and it's absolute gold. And the real estate space, the personal development space, dude, just life journey space, man. It's one of the favorite episodes that I've recorded yet. So listen, enjoy every single second of it, and please put your seatbelt on, and then make sure to share. Once again, man, we don't do advertisements for this. We are hoping that you will help us own the outcome by sharing this with everybody you freaking know. So once again, take something, take some notes, enjoy the episode of Mikey. Appreciate you once again for being on. Let's go. I think that the question I have along those lines too is what separates you? Meaning, what makes you different? What gears your mind in that direction? And what I mean by that is so many people experience that and they recoil, right? They go back. They quit, they whatever, they just get frustrated, whatever it is, they quit. Right. What makes somebody like you, because this doesn't just happen in that one instance. You've done this multiple times throughout your life as you've continued to evolve into these different careers in your life. Right. What makes you be like, no, I'm going to keep going. No, I'm going to try this. No, I'm going to do this. Like, what's that why behind it?
Oh, back then, I'm not sure what the why would have been back then, other than I don't want to stop being a pro skateboarder. That might have been maybe like what I would tell somebody if they asked me. I think there is a personality element to it. I think where I have a hard time giving up on things. Like if I set a goal, I become very obsessed on the goal. And also I'm a little bit obsessed with winning. I don't like losing. And I think that competitive nature was, I just felt like if I gave up or my career ended there, that was a loss. It's kind of maybe how I gamified it. Now knowing myself, I think it's more the journey. Like, what happened to me in the past is I'd set goals and I'd just be focused on hitting the goal. And then once I hit the goal, I would actually kind of enjoy it for a very short amount of time. And then I would look around and go, now what? And what I ended up learning is it's not really the goal that drives me. I really enjoy the process of trying to get to the goal. And I think back then it was just my goal is to be the largest pro skateboarder I can be. And that wasn't it. I wasn't experiencing that. I was experiencing a very low end, mediocre type of career. And so it was just, okay, that's not where I'm headed. That's not the goal. That's actually a loss and I don't want to lose. And so we're going to pivot and we're going to try something new,
Yeah. And the belief that you could, it's interesting because I just had a meeting with my whole company, and the topic of that meeting was similar to what you just said. It was that it's very rare. We think that happiness is going to come by obtaining something. It's money, success, a promotion, whatever. But as you achieve more and more of those, you're like, actually, that's not where it's found. It's actually found in just, the process of getting better, period. Like the progressional state of life.
Right. That's right. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And the earlier you figure that out, I think actually the more fun life will become.
Yeah. Fact. Because if not, you're always worried. You're always let down. You're always, dude, you're living in this. There's a book called The Gap and the Gain. I don't know if you've read this.
I've never read that. No.
Great book. And you're always living in this gap, right? Because you're measuring yourself against this ideal, which you're never going to get there because the ideal is always out in the future.
Right.
And so you're always living in this gap, this loss.
Right.
Viewing it in the game and the progression that you're making and really gamifying it, like you said, so powerful, man. So powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was a big turning point. That was one of those major moments for me.
So when was the transition where and I don't know this part of your journey, like the transition where you went from pro skateboarder to now businessman. Like, and how did that happen? Did that happen organically, strategically? What happened there?
Um, how it happened, it was, I think it was a God moment, but basically I was dating my wife and I was going to ask her to marry me. And so I called her dad and asked him to get lunch with me. And at this point, I had been pro almost 10 years. I did a really good job, not only saving money, but investing. Like I was very disciplined on making sure I had a vehicle of investments behind me for when my career ended, right? And I thought I had it all together. And I basically take him out to lunch and tell him, how much I love his daughter and I want to marry her and I want his blessing. And he pressed me. He pressed me hard. He's like, okay, look, like we like you a lot too, but like, what are you going to do after skateboarding? How are you going to take care of my daughter? And I was like, I don't know. Like maybe I'll start a company. And he's like, okay, what type of company? And I'm like it was just one of those things. Like I was so ill prepared to answer very easy questions. And so I just like left there going, dang, like, what am I going to do afterward? Right. And to say he also gave me his blessing, but he was just like, look, I want you to think about this stuff.
It's
And
a good
then,
dad right there.
yeah, that's right. And then maybe a month after that, my wife kind of had said something to kind of in that regard. And I don't know if they had been talking, but my wife was like, hey, so why don't you you don't have to figure this out now. Like, I'm not putting pressure on you to figure this out now, but why don't you start thinking about what you want to do after skateboarding? Like, what do you think would drive you and interest you? And, I have heard you talk about starting businesses before. What type of business would you start? And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. And I think her knowing the obsessive personality that I am, I started thinking about it over and over and over and couldn't get it out of my head. And so after that conversation, I think it had only taken maybe 6 months until I was fully on board with starting a brewery with 2 of my friends. And so that was the path that we went down. At the point of conception, it probably took us a full year, maybe even a year and a half to actually open doors. And then that was how we learned. Like myself and my 2 partners didn't really know business. We didn't really know beer. We just went for it and basically got our degree in entrepreneurship by starting a company.
See, dude, I saw one of your recent I love that. I saw one of your recent posts and you said something along the lines of the difference between those who have great ideas and those who do it, or business owners, or those who just do it.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Yeah.
Think about what you just said. We had an idea and then we didn't have any experience, any degree, any whatever. We just did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's going to be one of my questions is where did you learn business? And you learned business the same way I learned business, which is just doing it, like literally doing it. You learn so much along that process.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's funny because after we sold our business at the end of 2015, and in 16, 17, in 2017, I started coming up with the idea of my current business now. And even the idea of what am I now? Like I was a pro skateboarder, we started a business, and on social media, they basically classify you in your niche, right? And mine was always basically pro skateboarder. And so I was like, okay, what am I now? And I remember somebody said something to me. They're like, you're an entrepreneur. In 2017, I was like, an entrepreneur? What's an entrepreneur? I had already started and sold a business. I had no idea that was like a niche or a category, like completely clueless, So I think that's just like we didn't learn out of a book. We just learned by doing and then bringing great people in. And then that was it.
What does that look like? You start this brewing company, you've never started it, and you said you learned it by doing it.
Yeah.
That process isn't clean, right? It's messy.
Yeah.
Or was it clean? Maybe I'm guessing there. But
no, none of it was clean. I would say, if we go into real specifics on what it looked like, right when we decided we wanted to do a brewery, we had to figure out who was going to make the beer. And so we just started calling other breweries and asking if we could come in. And then we started asking them questions like, who makes your beer? And would you ever make our beer for us? So we probably spent, 6 months traveling around, going to breweries, asking people who were doing what we wanted to do, how this worked. We got to a point where we realized no one would make our beer, or ultimately there wasn't enough margin in it to have our basically product outsourced. And so we looked at each other and said, okay, we need to do our own brewery. Like, we need to make our own beer. And we realized very early on that we didn't have enough money to do that. And so I called a friend of mine who was kind of a business guy and asked for a meeting with him. And so me and my two partners basically presented this idea and asked him what we needed to do to start the company. And I remember he goes, "Where's your guys' business plan?" And we were like, "Business plan? Well, what is a business plan?" He's like, "Guys, you have to put together a plan of what you're actually doing." And we're like, "Okay." So we basically tried to do that on our own, and it wasn't that great. And then we hired a company to help us build a business plan for us. And then we had a business plan. And then we had to go basically raise money. We didn't have money to start ourselves. So we started pitching people. And the first pitches were terrible. We had no clue what we were doing until we figured out like a couple things that resonated. And then we tweaked. And then by the end of it, we had a pretty good pitch. And then we raised all the money, and then we started it. And then the real lessons began,
Yeah, exactly.
So, and look, it's trial and error. Like, I'm a really big believer in, if you're unwilling to quit, you're going to succeed. It just becomes a matter of time, right? And so we went into this thing going, we will not fail. We'll be challenged. We'll get it wrong, probably a lot, but we're not going to stop until we do it. And so our original crew that we started it with, I think we had maybe 8 employees or 8 people when we first started it. And after the first 12 months, none of them were there anymore. Like, we didn't know what we didn't know. And so even from a point of hiring the right people, we didn't even know how to do that. And so it was just constantly trial and error, trial and error.
See, that's what's so inspirational for me, though, is because I think for a lot of people is because you can do whatever you set your mind to do if you just decide to do it. And that's not a one-time decision. That decision to do it is sometimes multiple times a day that you got to recommit to the process of building. Right. And so it's what's going to cause you to continue to recommit consistently over and over and over again. And I know what it is for me. My question would be, was it your father-in-law? Was it your wife? Or was it just that personality, like you mentioned earlier, is like, that's who you are?
I have a really hard time quitting. I have a really hard time with it. And like, I think back at this, the earliest memory I have of this, my dad and I were in this, like, it was like a father-son, like, kind of camp thing. And I remember we had gone up to this city, Big Bear, right? San Bernardino. And in it, the kids would get badges, almost like a Boy Scout type of thing, but it wasn't Boy Scouts. And you had to go around and name everybody's name, all the dads' names and all the kids' names, right? And I remember everybody was doing it. Then it was my turn. And, I get one person, two person, and I must have sat there for 30 minutes trying to remember everybody's names, right? And I ended up doing it. And I remember after I looked at my dad, I was like, dang, I kind of blew it. Like, that took me forever. And what my dad said to me was, yeah, but did you notice you were unwilling to quit? Right? At a young age. Like, I don't know why. I have never liked the idea of quitting. And so I think that element has carried on with me. So I think there is something there. And then on top of it, like, when you start a company and you've used other people's money to do it, and those investors are people like your dad and your uncle and your father-in-law and your friends, there's an added element of responsibility that's put on your shoulders. And if you fail, you're failing for the people that you love. You add that mixed with the thing inside me, which is I will not fail. And it created the perfect storm. And then to add on to that, my two partners were the same exact way. Like, we were in that kind of vein, all built the same way. And so I think it was the perfect alignment of founders who were naive enough to try it and go for it, and stubborn enough to not stop until it was accomplished.
So good, dude. You know what I love more? The whole story, what I love the most of that is your dad, the impact your dad made, because all your dad did is this simple, it's a frame. You were framing it as like, shit, it took me forever. And he framed it as, you didn't quit.
Right.
Did you notice you didn't quit? It was just
Yeah.
how you framed the situation.
Yeah.
And
Powerful,
immediately
right?
in my mind, I'm like, oh, so powerful. Immediately in my mind, I'm like, man, how often do I frame the situation incorrectly for myself, but also incorrectly for my kids? You know, how can I frame it better for them? So I love that. I love your dad for doing that, man. That's a good dad right there.
Yeah, he was
That's a
good.
great dad.
Still is good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what was the biggest challenge for you? Like you mentioned, you know, people viewing you, you know, giving you a hate on the chat threads or whatever it was. And now you make this transition from pro skateboarder, and now you're transitioning into real estate, you're transitioning into business, all these things. Was that, and you talked about, you know, an entrepreneur, how do you qualify? Was that a challenge to like reinvent yourself? And amongst that, like with that challenge, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's a big challenge. It's interesting because when we started the brewery, I think beer is perceived as cool in most cultures. Skateboarding, beer is cool.
Yeah.
And so when we did that, like there was no hit to the ego, like or hit to the brand. Like we actually looked cooler by doing that. When I started Commune Capital, there was no more brewery. I wasn't a pro skateboarder anymore. And now I was talking about money and investing, which is, I mean, you guys want to talk about like taboo and in most categories. In skateboarding, this is something you don't do, right? It's like all the way off limits. And it was probably the hardest challenge I have had to date in the business world, was having to reinvent myself in that kind of moment of moving from post craft brewery into starting this company. And I remember I remember there was a window where what I was living in real life and what I was showing on social media was probably a 10 or so month delay. And what I mean by that, I had started the company and we were already operating as a business, but I wasn't posting anything on social media about financial education, about investing, about real estate. And I felt like if all of a sudden I was showing people what I was currently doing, it was too much of a change from pro skateboarder and, you know, talking, you know, highlighting a product, which was the beer, into this is what compound interest is. This is what depreciation is. And so I remember coming up with this strategy of a very slow pivot on social media. And so I would say it probably took me, oh man, 2.5 years until I was current, where what I was posting was what I was actually going through. But man, it was probably close to 4 years of hate in my comments, of people telling me I shouldn't be doing this and this is whack and this isn't it and you're a disgrace from skateboarding. It was a long time of that.
See, I educate people. I have an investment company, and then I like mentor people on doing the same thing.
Right.
And the question that I get all the time is, man, nobody knows me as an investor. They know me as a dentist or a whatever they do. And sure, at making the transition, I get it. And I had to make the same one. But the reason I ask you that question is very strategic. It's because most people don't even know who you are. You have 100 followers. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the other people. You have 100 followers on Instagram. 100. I don't know how that does that on the thing, but 100 followers on Instagram, 100 followers on Facebook. Nobody even knows you. You're a public figure in a well-known space that makes this pivot that once again is a taboo topic. I mean, that's mentally challenging. Like, did you have imposter syndrome through that process?
It's interesting. I didn't have it on the social media side. I struggled with it a little bit in the beginning on the actual business side. And I think that's because, like, you know, we talked about our path to get here. My path was very different than most people in the commercial real estate space, but it wasn't that different from people in the beer industry, right? Most people in the beer industry, it's regular people that like beer. Like, you know what, I'm going to try making it. And, you know, maybe they get like a home brewing kit and then, you know, they start selling it to their friends and then they get a little storage unit, whatever, right? It's such a natural process of what felt like normal people, right? When I got into the private equity world, now I'm dealing with investment bankers and suits and MBAs and very not only accomplished, but people that all took a very similar path to get here. Everybody went to school. Everybody was in the, had their, relationships from that school, and all of a sudden money was accessible. There was an insecurity at the beginning of that. And it felt like everybody went through the front door and I kind of had snuck through the side. And even to the way I was dressing, right? Like I'm going into meetings, everybody's in a suit. And I'm like, I kind of look like a skater still. And I remember going, gosh, man, like I'm a little uncomfortable. Like I feel out of place. And it probably took me, I would say 12 months until I fully felt comfortable with myself, and then actually started looking at my path as a strategic advantage, as opposed to an outlier or, what would be the right way to say this? Somebody who got lucky and didn't deserve to be there, right? And then it started getting fun, actually. Like once I was like, you know what? Like I am different. I'm going to own it. And this is actually what's going to make people want to do business with me. This is what's going to make people actually remember me. And then I started leaning into it. And then it was like, let's go with this, But in the beginning, yeah, it was tough. I think anything you do in a new space, there's going to be an insecurity element. And then, you touched on it earlier, when you're known for one thing and then you're having to move into another, I think there's an added pressure put upon you, whether that's a real pressure, one that's made up in your head. You do feel that, Yeah.
Man, that part is huge. That part's huge because it's this constant narrative in your head. Well, I'm regurgitating in my mind what I just heard you say, but really it's this constant narrative in your head that turning what could be perceived as a detriment into actually a superpower.
Right.
Like you're just choosing a perspective that's serving instead of a perspective that, isn't serving.
Right.
And in reality, this is what I love about you though, bro. Like I told you, Strat turned me on to you and I started diving into your content. And what I love about you is that you are uniquely you, like running for city council, and I don't know where I even heard this, or whether there's a podcast. I went deep into your stuff, but whether it was a podcast or a clip on, I don't even really know where I heard it, but you're getting counseled to not go by the name Mikey, correct?
Right. Right.
Like, I love that you just own you. Like you are who you are. And that is actually your unique, like, that's why people resonate with you, bro. It's because you are you and people feel that. So that side, another challenge, right? Was it even ever a thought on your mind, like, okay, maybe I should change and not go, I just go by Mike or Michael instead of Mikey? Or were you like, no, dude, this is who I am?
Well, that was it's interesting because when you do something new and you go into a new category, again, you don't know what you don't know, and you're kind of relying on people that know that space, and you're relying on their guidance to help push you in the right path, at least, in those beginning steps or beginning levels. And so I remember in the beginning of the campaign, I was really leaning on the team, really leaning on my campaign manager. And that was something that was thrown out early. Like, look, the community that you're running in, it's about 125,000 residents. The majority of them are 50 plus. And Mikey sounds like a kid name. Like you're already the youngest one running, or one of the youngest ones running. Everyone on our current council board, I think the youngest person was 60. So I seemed like there was so much contrast already. And he was like, look, I think Michael will not only play better, but you'll probably get more of that older demographic that matters, right? They're the largest voting base. And I wrestled with it, of course. The competitive side of me is going, I want to win this thing. Like, I'm not doing this to just for fun. Like I'm trying to win. And I was conflicted by it, but where I landed, and this is where I ultimately decided to stay with it, was you're always trying to be you. But I think when you start getting into the political world, at least for me, speaking personally, the thing I never liked about politics is people never felt real. I felt like I was getting a facade of a person that I never knew what he was really saying or what she was really saying. It seemed like they were just always speaking from a script. And I never wanted that. That wasn't why I was trying to get involved in at least local politics. So I got to this point where I was like, you know what? If I end up becoming the very thing that I don't like, I'm going to be very disappointed in myself. And I would rather be authentic to myself and lose than try to win being someone else. And so I was like, you know what? Whatever. We're sticking with Mikey. I am what I am. This is what you're voting for. And if I win, okay, then I think the community is on board with my vision and I did a good job getting that vision out. And if not, that's not it. Like, this isn't what the community wants, and I should be okay with that. And so I stuck with it. And then even when I won, like, the city's like, so do you want Mikey on the dais with your name? I'm like, yeah, we're running this one out all the way out.
See, man, you know your avatar, because it's why I resonate with your content, because I can relate to it on so many different levels. Like, when I started in the commercial real estate space, no education, I felt like I was younger than anybody that in any room that I was in. I was in my like late 20s. And so I was the youngest in many rooms that I was in. So I felt like I had to start talking all professionally, use big words, but that's just not me. Right. I say, dude, I cuss. And like, once I just became comfortable in my own skin, which took me a while, by the way, but once I did, my business took off.
Right.
And
that's right. That's right. You should say that again. That's actually very powerful point.
Yeah. You're just comfortable in your own skin, and your business takes off. And what else takes off is your quality of life, because you stop worrying about how do you transform to what people expect you to be, and just be who you know you want to be and who you are. Right.
Right.
That's powerful.
Well
it's a
said.
form of abundance, right? It's a form of abundance.
Very well said.
But yeah, but I get that from you, bro, because that's what I resonate with. That's why so many of us resonate with your content, and not just your content, resonate with you. Like, I want to be clear, like, with you, because you've done things that are outside of the norm. You know, you've made these shifts and these changes that are outside of the norm. But what's the biggest thing to me, and a lot of people will see that, like, think that that's the biggest thing that's outside of the norm. I don't believe it. I think the biggest thing that you've done that have outside of the norm is maintained who you are. Like, maintained who you are through the process. And that is a win, my friend. Like, that's a win.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to circle back to a couple more things. One of the things you mentioned when you started the brewing company is that you hired people, and then I can't remember, 12 months in or something, none of those people were still there. Was it because you didn't know who to hire, or was it because there was struggles in the beginning and they, it was too much for them? What caused that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably a little bit of both. When you like, we didn't know anything about the industry. So like, when we were getting connected with people, it's like, oh, I have a friend who does this, okay, cool, let's do this, and then I think the other thing was, like, when you start something, not everyone is built for a startup. It is the first year of business is incredibly challenging. And, like, I'll give an example. Like, when we originally went out to raise money, a lot of the early investors that we were talking to felt like we needed like a actual CFO with like big time experience, not just a bookkeeper or, somebody who understood finances but had never taken a significant CFO role at another business. So we're like, okay, crap, like, we got to do that. So we brought on somebody who is a phenomenal guy, who's unreal, but he was the CFO of a very, very large music company. And it was more of the corporate structure. And so when we first basically launched, he's losing his mind. Like, guys, we're going out of business. You guys are spending money like crazy. We're not profitable. Where's the structure? There was no structure. We're building this ship as we're out off to sea, And so, like, people like that, he was just, it wasn't the right fit, where we didn't bring somebody in that was, I think, really built for that type of entrepreneurship with three guys who were figuring it out at the same time, right? Yeah. Others, it was, let me put it this way. When you're first starting out, you're trying to get anyone that will help. When you really start trying to do it right, you're bringing on people that are great. And we just didn't understand that. So we got to a point where we went, you know what, we've got something here, we better do it all the way. And then we started hiring people that were very well known and very successful at these larger companies to bring them on. And that was pivotal for us. So that was now us, relying on their proven track record to actually build something, as opposed to the total group trying to figure it out collectively,
Yeah. Change is synonymous with growth, man. And a lot of times you see that change happen in an organization where people peel away, and it almost personally caused me sometimes to be like, oh man, like, are we in the direction? Did I do something wrong? And in reality, what I've learned from that process is, no, dude, like, that doesn't mean that that person is bad or the company. It just means that they weren't a fit for what you're doing. And that is okay. That's actually a sign of growth.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing. The right people will come along.
That's right. And look, like, when I say we had no business experience, we had no business experience. We didn't know how to hire people. We didn't know how to scale. We didn't know, we didn't know anything. And if you're talking about the hiring part, that one actually took me, to talk about me personally, time. Like, I had to really learn how to bring the right skill set in, not just the personality that I got along with. That was a big learning lesson for me. And then I think the other one is, when you start something, if you're a type A, you're competitive personality, you want to be top dog, right? You want to be the one. And that can be very, very detrimental to a business, because what you should be doing is actually bringing people on that are smarter than you, that are more capable than you are. And you got to really, really check the ego to put somebody in a position where they are better than you, and ultimately they can shine, which would lead to the most success for the company. But human behavior is tough, man. Like, it takes a while to learn that about yourself. And so that was a learned lesson for me as well.
So I have a question about that. You talked about the personality aspect, because I'm big on culture. And so I've fallen into this trap too. This trap of, okay, I want to bring somebody in that culturally I align with. And a lot of times I think in my mind, that's somebody that I get along with, like, personality wise. But in reality, there's so I guess, how do you navigate that? How do you remove just this individual personality versus the culture of the company? And what is the fit? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a
loaded question, bro.
It's actually a really good question. So there's a couple things, at least for me, that are non-negotiables. Whether you're gonna, be my bro, or we're just gonna have a working relationship. Like, there's certain things that I want to see in any person that's going to be a part of this company. One, do they fit the culture? Like, are they going to come in and be able to operate in a kind of cohesive group? That's one. Two, how do they handle pressure? Like, that's a really big one for me. Like, I am totally okay when somebody makes a mistake. What I want to see in somebody is, when you make a mistake, what is your process from there on? Are you trying to wipe it under the rug, or are you taking accountability from it, learning, and then applying a new strategy? Those are big for me. Are you honest? Huge one for me. Yeah. Other than that, if we can get past the non-negotiables, what I have to check myself on is, I'm not looking for a friend that I can hang out with outside of work. If that lines up, great, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who's good at something I am not, right? Mm-hmm. And usually it's different personality types that fit that, right? I'm a very outgoing type of personality. I'm an extrovert. I am not an operator. I am not about systems. I am not about efficiency. I love that. I'm never going to create that. So if I'm meeting with somebody who's, going to manage our business, and he's like me, story time and having fun, everything's good, and, no attention to detail, we have a massive problem. So like, maybe a real life example would be, if I'm looking for a CFO, not always, but most of the time, they're more introverted. They're very detail oriented. This isn't always the case, but a lot of times I found they're more black and white, even in their personality. They don't just spit out things, like I do. I think it and then spit it out. They're very calculated in the way they talk. That is very different than who I am as a person. And so I think just recognizing it's okay if you're not like me. That's actually why I'm hiring you. I need you to be good at something I'm not.
Yeah.
I would say that, the thing that I usually you see certain categories or positions that fit the big personality traits. Like when we're interviewing accountants, asset managers, controllers, these are typically more of that mold, detail oriented. They're usually numbers, system based. And so when you go to like the conversation of culture, I just need to, you need to understand that it's okay if it's not 100 sales guys who are spewing charisma. That's normal to not have that. At the end of the day, make sure you're hiring somebody that's good at their task.
So good, man. So good. That's it. I love that you had identified your non-negotiables, because ultimately that is what it comes down to. What are the non-negotiables? And one thing is, the podcast name is Own the Outcome. And one of the things for me is, how do you take feedback and failure? Because we're going to grow. We're going to continue to grow, and growth is going to happen by failure, feedback, and then application. And so how do you handle that when you fail? Like, same type of thing that you said, it's huge for me. I don't care about the failure. I literally don't care.
Right.
Becoming a dad made me it really helped my relationship with God, because I beat myself up. Like, I beat myself up, right? I'm very hard on myself. And all of a sudden I have kids, and I don't care. Paxton, Marley, I don't care if I know they're going to make a mistake. They're kids. I don't care about the mistake. I care, did you learn from it? And the minute that they learn from it, the minute that they just own it and talk about, I don't care about it at all. It is forgot. I do not care. I'm just like so proud of them. I just want to just hug them for learning the lesson, Right. And when I think about leadership, I'm pretty spiritual. I'm Christian. And so when I think of a leader, I think of, dude, Christ is a great leader. And so I want to model leadership with that. And so I have an employee, a team member, or whoever that makes a mistake. Well, dude, if I want grace, because I'm going to make more mistakes than anybody, that's a fact. So if I want grace, well, I better give grace and help with the learning process. And then the key, though, is, do they actually want to learn and grow? Right.
That's right.
And if we got that, man, we have so much from there.
That's right.
Because strength is in your differences, not the similarities.
That's right. That's right. That's very, very, very well said.
That's it, man. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of real estate questions, because I'm in the real estate space and I have to.
Hit me.
And then I want to be respectful of your time, but
hit me.
A lot going on in the real estate space. I loved your website. By the way, anybody out here, you need to go check out Mikey's website, which is
communecapital.com.
Okay, there we go. Communecapital.com. And what I loved about your website, it also has your field, dude. It has your field. I love the About You section. I love the videos that you have on there. But I love that your landing page just addresses the concern right out the gate. It is literally all you see is a video that they can click on. Why should I invest in real estate in 2023? We'll tell you why. Right. And then you just address the issues. Loved it, bro.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's talk about it. There's a lot going on in the real estate space. I'm in multifamily. You're in a bunch of different sectors within the commercial real estate space. What do you see coming down the pipeline? Challenges coming down the pipeline over the next, 2, 3, even next year, 2, 3 years? And how do you plan on capitalizing there?
Okay. So we're in multifamily. We're in storage. If we're looking at gosh, we go macro, you talk about all the asset classes. There's two things at play. There's rising interest rates. There's softening cap rates. There's capital pullback on both sides, equity and debt. And then in certain asset classes, the fundamentals are not working as well. So someone like, let's say, multifamily or storage, the fundamentals are still there. There's still a lot of demand. Occupancy is really high still. The projects themselves work. The challenge that we're seeing in, let's say, the asset classes where they do work is it's more interest rates or the debt piece of it.
Yep.
Something like office is getting hit on both sides. The fundamentals are gone and the debt side is gone. So you talk about something like office. I think office is going to get crippled through this. I think it's actually going to be very concerning. Most times I look at a space we're not in and go, whatever, I don't care about office. I don't own office. I think it's actually going to be a big problem. Looking at national, kind of some of the or regional banks, the regional banks own a lot of, or a lot of their debt is in office. If office isn't going to come back in the next 10 years, I'm not sure how we're going to navigate through that. I think it's going to get pushed onto the city. I think the city is going to have a lot of responsibility trying to figure out what to do with this office. But if I was an office owner, I'd be very, very concerned right now. Multifamily, I mean, the demand's there. I think considering you're not in a position where you have a loan due and you're not going to qualify for the new loan, or you don't have the capital to put in to qualify, I think you're fine. Storage, I think the same way. Retail, surprisingly, is like actually doing pretty good. I saw the data on retail, not expecting that. I thought retail is going to be challenged. Hospitality, my expectation is hospitality is going to get hit pretty good. I think that's going to make its way all the way down to Airbnb. We'll see what happens with that, but it's in my opinion that when we go through economic downturns or hard times, people stop traveling. They stop going out. They pull their money back. And then you couple that with Airbnb being such a high trend, everybody having money everywhere. I think a lot of people got into the asset class because of the energy, didn't do the proper due diligence. I think there might be an impact on that side. With all that said, how are we going about it? We're taking a very conservative approach on the debt side, but a very optimistic approach on going after new projects. So, I would say the majority of stuff that's coming across our desk right now is developers that started building that are worried that they're not going to qualify for their permanent financing and are looking for capital now. But on top of that, you have a lot of sellers that I think are trying to let go of their asset and coming to realization that cap rates have moved, which means the valuation has moved. So we are going after deals. But when you talk about the debt side, 2 years ago, we were doing construction loans or, 3-year bridge debt. We're staying away from that now. We're doing more mini perm debt, which, means a lot more equity down. And it means the IRR comes down because a lot of the risk is being taken out with that. So we're taking a very conservative approach, but we are buying. We're buying more now than we have in the last, call it 10 years.
Yeah, I love it. This is what I loved about your video too. You talked about the headlines in the news and how most people in the head, you hear the news, that's what they're hearing. But in reality, what you just talked about is a strategic approach. The fundamentals for multifamily are still there. The problem is really those people who got into bridge loans and have loans coming due, and there's also your opportunity, right? You talked about
that's 100%. Yeah, it's 100%. Look, I'm going to tell everybody who's not a real estate investor, or if you're just getting started here, is one of the key points to being a successful real estate investor: give yourself options. If you have options, it makes it very, very hard to lose money. It's those that give themselves one way out are usually the ones that are not here long. And I think that's what you're starting to experience now.
And when you say one way out and give yourself options, drill down on that. What do you mean by that?
Okay, I'll give you a story because it happened to me about 6 months ago. I'm in Maui 6 months ago, right? Family's out there. And I'm walking on the beach because we had a newborn and she was jet lagged. And so I'm doing the 5 a.m., 4 a.m. wake up calls, right? So I'm walking along the beach and I've got my phone. I'm looking through DMs and I get a DM from somebody, check mark, a couple 100,000 followers. And he's like, Mikey, I follow you. I'm in your space. I've got a deal. I would love to partner with you on this. Do you think you'd want to come in on the equity side and then we would cross promote the marketing? And I looked at it and went, you know what? That's kind of interesting, cross promoting the marketing with another person who has a following. Yeah, send me the details, right? And he goes, I'll send you the high level right now, and then we'll go into details. I'm like, all right, cool. So correct me, I may be wrong on these numbers, but I'll give you kind of the broad strokes. It was about a $14 million total cost project, and he was raising about $2 million, right? And he goes, 12 million, raising 2, it's going to be worth, I don't know, let's call it 18 when we're done, right? I'm like, okay, you're only raising $2 million? That seems a little aggressive right now. And his response was, heck yeah, huge refi opportunity, right? Oof. And I was just like, okay, for me, this is too risky. This is an example of one way out, right? Everything has to go right. Interest rates can't move. Cap rates can't move. You have to be completely on budget and have to have everything aligned. You get stabilized, you get the value, then you move into your refi and you have a cash out, an opportunity to pull cash out, right? If anything goes wrong, you don't get that opportunity. That would be an example to me where I don't, there's not enough options there, right? What we're doing, which is a conservative approach, but I think this is more options. We're putting 10-year debt from the onset. Now, in 3 years, if the Fed actually does what they say they're going to do and drive drive interest rates back down, there's nothing that stops us from refining. But if they don't do that, there's nothing that forces us to have to refi out of our loan. I like that for options, you know?
Me too. Love it. That's such a great example. That's the same thing we're doing, by the way, because I got bit in the ass the other way. Like put in some bridge debt, had those experiences, those learning lessons, if you will.
Right.
And you learn.
Yeah.
That's it though. We're doing the same thing, man, longer term debt and just more conservative. Yeah, your equity side goes up and your returns may go down, but man, your safety increases. And at a time like this, a recessionary state, like, dude, it's all about protection, options, and dude, playing the long-term game, not this short-term 2-year refi game. Right. It's not the industry we're in right now.
That's right. And you know, the other things we were talking in the beginning about insecurities and, you know, taking the opinions of others. It's interesting because when you're raising money, when you hear no's, you can get yourself in a position where you're questioning your strategy, right? This comes with time, but you will eventually get to a point where you're comfortable in your strategy. And when people say no, it doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. It means it's just not a good fit. And that still happens to us today. Like people look at us and go, bro, way too conservative. Like interest rates are not going to stay where they're at for 3 years. And the truth be told, I actually don't think they're going to. I would agree that the odds are on your favor. I'm just not willing to take the risk that if it doesn't happen, I lose a great asset, knowing that the fundamentals are there. That's the thing. The demand's there. This is a phenomenal asset class to be in, knowing that we're undersupplied in a lot of markets, and developing these things is going to take a long time, especially with the debt pullback that we're experiencing. All development deals, by and large, are on hold right now. That is a good position to be in if you want comfort that you're going to be able to lease up and have your property sit at a high occupancy. So I agree. I'm just not willing to take that amount of risk. And for some people, they are okay with that. And that, I think, is the message. That's okay. If you understand the risk and you are comfortable if that outcome happens, good. If you're not, then you look for different options.
That's it. And if you're going to raise capital, you better make sure that your investors are comfortable with the same risk that you're about to take.
Right.
Right. Be very clear with that.
That's right.
Brother, I want to be respectful of your time. That's such a great answer and a great thing to end on, though, because once again, it's the perspective of, dude, this is the strategy. I know what I've been doing it for 20 something years. I'm comfortable in being conservative right now, given what's going on. I love it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, bro, it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. Last question as I wrap up. You can do it very quickly. Well, what's next for Mikey Taylor, man? What's next for Mikey Taylor? Where do you see yourself 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
I know that was an attempt to be a quick one, but I don't have a quick answer, only because there's a couple things I'm playing around with. But truth be told, in 5 years, I will still be fully running this business the way I am now. I think it's going to take 5 years to get it to the point of where it's completely operating without me, or I have the choice to let this thing run without me. It's going to take a little bit of time. Our goals are pretty high with our company right now. But what's next? I don't know. Part of me wants to okay, I'm going to tell you what's next. I'm trying to stay away from it, but I'm going to tell it to you. There will be a point in my life where I do marriage retreats. I don't know when, but there is going to be a point in my life where I put together trips for couples who are probably similar to us, where you're more of an obsessive type A personality, you're a business builder, you're trying to figure out how to be a successful husband or a successful wife and a successful mother or father and still have a business. I'm going to do something with that. I know I'm going to, I just don't know when. So with all that said, somewhere in my life, I will do that. God willing, I guess is the right way to say it.
I love it. You should. I've seen videos of you, your kids. I saw the video of you interviewing your wife. You should, man. People could benefit. I just tell, man, I'm a great read of energy. I can tell that you guys have a great relationship. You should do those, man.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Maybe
I'll be on the lookout for it.
Maybe the first one will be in Maui. We'll get you. We'll get Brandon on board. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go, dude. Hey, listen, we can cross collaborate with marketing.
Right? I love it. I love it.
Love it. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much for being on here. We'll put all your links on how everybody can connect with you down below in the description as well. If you don't already follow Mikey on Instagram, on social media, anywhere, you're one of a select few who don't. So go follow him, and always, always, always live with aloha. Peace.